Hey everybody, BK Adams here. This video I'm going to randomly create another Mighty Protectors VNV3 character. This time it's going to be a villain. It's going to be a standard power level character at 150 points. And first up, I'm going to start with birthplace. So I got my handy dice roller and I need to roll a D100 and I roll a 90. Which is, if we look at the chart, that is foreigner. So, okay, that's interesting. So, it says foreigner, the character is from another well-known region of the world on which they're first encountered. If that world is the Earth, roll on the known regions table. And if they're encountered in some other world, the GM will have to determine what region that they would have come from. Okay, so we'll say it's Earth, that this villain is from Earth. So here's the known regions chart, which is another D100. So let's roll that. I get a 19. Looking at the chart, that is China. So, okay, so our guy, his birthplace is somewhere in China. He or she or it. Okay, so that's birthplace. Next up, we have species. So that's another D100 roll. So I roll a 48. That is human. Okay. So we'll go to our character sheet and put human in. Alright, next up we have, let's see, that's 213. Culture is 214. And here it says, unless otherwise indicated on the previous tables, every character's culture is modern. So we haven't rolled anything other than modern, so his or her culture is going to be modern. Next up, we've got age. And in previous videos, I've said that the default for random age is 2 die 10 plus 10. So let's go ahead and use that. So I'll reset the roller. So 2 die 10 plus a 10 gives us 28. Okay, so we'll put 28 in. So next up we have gender, and this is a series of rolls. And the first one is 24, so it is a woman. Next up is gender expression. That's 19. It's the same as gender identity. Next up is D100 roll for biological sex. That's a 17, which means cisgender. That means the biological sex is aligned with the gender identity. Okay, and the last roll is an 18, which means they are straight. They are attracted to members of a different gender. So straight cis woman is what we randomly rolled. Next up we have basic characteristics, and the way you randomly roll this is your roll, and the numbers are already predetermined. And for a standard power level campaign, that the highest stat is an 18, and then a 16, a 14, 12, and 10. You're rolling for the order that they get assigned. So we need a die 10 for this roll. Go ahead and reset the thing again. Our first roll is a 1. So we look at this chart here, and a 1 is strength. So that 18 goes to strength. Okay. Our next D10 roll is a 10. That is going to be cool. See here, 9 to 10 is cool. The second stat is a 16. So she has a 16 cool. Next up, we get a 6. 6 is agility. Hard to highlight that, but yeah, so agility, we're on the third number, that's a 14. So 14 agility. And the next number is a 9. Well, we've already rolled a 9 or a 10 is cool. We've already rolled that. So when you roll a number that you've already used, you just go down the chart. So going down from cool goes to strength. Well, we've done strength already as well, so the next one down would be endurance. So the fourth number, which is a 12, goes to endurance. And then the last number left is intelligence, which gets a 10. Okay, so that's the stats, randomly determined. Next up, now this is the part where normally you would, or you could start filling these in, right? So, well, actually, we need to wait for the Excel sheet to fill out. But if you're doing this on paper, you could go through you could use the big basic characteristics table, go across it, figure out what your carrying capacity would be. Well, with an 18 strength, that's 480 pounds. The base hand-to-hand damage is a die 8 plus 1, and you would get 6 hit points from your strength. So you would do that. You would do it for all sorts of things like your your physical and mental defense, your initiative, your power, your hits, your movement rate, your healing, how far you can leap, things like that. Since we've got an Excel sheet, we don't have to do that. The sheet will do that for us automatically. So next up, we have weight and mass, and it says adult male characters roll 5 die 6, adult female characters roll 5 die 4, and you multiply that result by 10 to find the character's weight in pounds. So let's roll 5 die 4 since she is an adult female. I get 11. So 11 multiplied by 10 is 110. So we will put 110, and you can see the mass roll just got figured out by the sheet, so it's a D4. Okay, next up we have background, and here it says roll 3 times on the following table and choose 2 of the results to keep. You can re-roll duplicates or keep them. So here's our background chart, which is basically it has a background category, and then it's in parentheses it has a bunch of suggested career examples for that background. So this is D100. Our first one's a 53. That is military. Okay, so we'll go ahead and write military down. Now, when we're done with this, it's not going to say military because we're going to pick a career, right? So I'm not going to do that quite yet because need to figure out what the other background is. So soldier, officer, mercenary, guerrilla, wargamer, etc. Those are some of the examples. The second one is a 2, which is medicine. Okay, medicine. We'll get one more roll, and we're going to have to drop one of these, but our third roll is a 22, and that is commercial art. Okay, so I think military medicine, maybe she was a nurse, a military nurse, or a military surgeon. She's 28, so yeah, she could be a surgeon or something like that. Let's look at so military is some kind of soldier, and then medicine, surgeon, nurse, pharmacist, physical therapist, paramedic. Okay, so let's go ahead and make her a military surgeon. She's a woman who performs operations on their soldiers, I suppose. So when you combine these into one career, you get a +3, and so that's what I did. So whenever a task comes up that a military surgeon could perform, now obviously they're in the military, so they go through boot camp. Now, I'm not familiar with the Chinese military, but I assume all militaries are pretty much the same. So you go through boot camp, you know how to use a weapon, probably various weapons, you know how to throw grenades, you go through like NBC training, probably some hand-to-hand training, possibly you would know how to sneak around, and then from a surgeon standpoint, you know the things that a surgeon would know how to do. You know how to operate on people, you know how to help them, you know various drugs you would use, you're skilled and that sort of thing. So great. So next up we have motivation. This is again, now there's two different charts. There's a chart for superheroes and it's D100, and there's a chart for supervillain. Well, we're making a supervillain, so here's that chart. So it's a D100. We go ahead and reset the roller, and I roll a 48, and that is greedy egotist. It says the villain doesn't recognize the rights of others and suffers from the delusion that they have a grand destiny and deserve to acquire vast personal wealth and power. Okay, so do the drop down menu and put that in. Okay. Next up, so wealth and luck, I've already filled out. The standard is a D4 for wealth and a 10 or less luck roll. And next up we have origin type. Again, it's a D100. So I roll an 87, and that is physical training. Okay. So let's go ahead and put that down. And all physical training just says the character develop their own abilities through hard, diligent work, either alone or as part of a larger group. Only relatively mundane abilities can be acquired this way, and so any unusual abilities they possess almost certainly take the form of gear, either issued to them by the group who trained them or put together by the character themselves to augment their training. Right, so let's see, let's talk about legal status. Okay, so first up, we're going to roll twice on each of these charts. There's offensive abilities, there's defensive abilities, and there's miscellaneous abilities. And lastly, there's a weakness chart. So first up are offense abilities. So I'll reset the thing again. So our first roll is a 21. That is flame abilities for offensive. So flame abilities, okay. Next up, I get a 90 transmutation, which is the default for transmutation is turning biological creatures into something else. And of course, flame abilities is, you know, like Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. He can burst into flame or fire flame out of his hands. Okay, so next up for defensive ability. Now, normally you would randomly roll twice, but I'm making these characters specifically to do a video on how absorption works. So I'm just going to give this character absorption as one of her defensive abilities, and I'll randomly roll the other one, which I get a 73, and that is light control. Okay, so light control. So now we've done our offensive, our defensive. Now we're doing miscellaneous. So the first roll is a 77. That is summoning. And our second roll for miscellaneous is 37. That is heightened senses. Okay. Okay, now we get to roll for our weaknesses. And let's see, does it say? It says, well, we haven't actually rolled our weaknesses yet. It says, here it is. It says each character must also select 2 random weaknesses. Roll twice on the table below. Reroll if the same weakness is rolled more than once. Okay. So here's our first weakness. We get a 51. That is psychosis. And the second weakness is a 20, which is lowered intelligence. Okay. All right. And let's see, is there, what other random stuff is there? Oh, here, under criminal record, which this goes under legal status. So it says criminal record. It says there is a 33% chance that any newly encountered supervillain already has a criminal record. So let's go ahead and roll a D100 and I'll 1 through 33. She already has a criminal record. 34. Well, you know, that's really close. And she is a supervillain, so I'm gonna say she has a. So she's a Chinese citizen with a criminal record. So I'm fudging by 1 point just because I think it's kind of cool. I've never actually rolled that before, but you know, it kind of makes sense. He's, you know, someone who's unethical, does something, you know, gets convicted, maybe kicked out of the military, and then becomes a supervillain. Okay. Oh, and so we'll pick sides. She's evil, and we'll do a random name for her true ID, and come up with a name, and possibly make a you know, a picture for her, and then we'll fill out. I'll fill out all these abilities as to what they do.